Misery is directed by... Wait, hang on. Who is it directed by? What? Rob Reiner? As in When Harry Met Sally? As in Princess Bride Rob Reiner?
Oh my god!
This film also stars James Caan and Kathy Bates and is based on the novel by Stephen King. So this is normally where I would give you a synopsis of the film's story, but I find this a very good opportunity to unveil a new segment of mine, which is a little something I like to call Slipcover Slips. This segment is dedicated to those slipcover descriptions on the back of your DVD, Blu-ray, or VHS that sometimes misrepresent your film or fail to give it justice. And what better title to begin with than what we have here? So without further ado, I give you Misery's Slipcover Slips. A heart-stopping psychological thriller, says Joel Siegel. This Academy Award-winning film is one of the best horror movies ever. One of the best horror movies ever made, says the Time magazine. The Time magazine. That's wrong. Okay. Adapted from a Stephen King story, this unforgettable film will draw you into a harrowing game played between two cunning minds, one as sharp as a tack, the other as blunt as a sledgehammer. Novelist Paul Sheldon doesn't remember the blinding blizzard that sent his car spinning off the road. All he remembers is waking up in the home of Annie Wilkes, a maniacal fan who's bent on keeping her favorite writer as her personal prisoner for the rest of his cock-a-doodie life. Reads like a comedy, doesn't it? Good stuff. Now don't worry, in case you haven't seen this movie, there's a whole lot more to it, so let's try this again. Paul Sheldon is a writer famed for a series of novels surrounding their title character, Misery Chastain. Wait, sorry, can I just say that I personally think that name, Misery Chastain, sounds pretty fantastic. Reaching a period of his life where he has decided he doesn't only want to be known for his Misery novels, he has decided to end the series in its latest entry by killing off the title character. As he completes his newest work, a book he hopes will breathe new life into his career, he goes on a drive through the mountains of Colorado. He is unaware, however, a blizzard is currently striking the area and Paul loses control of his vehicle, overturning it in a snowbank. Luckily, he is rescued by Annie Wilkes, a former nurse who declares,
"I'm your #1 fan."
She appears to want nothing more than to nurse him back to health so that he can continue writing her favorite series. This is until she reads his latest release. Upon learning the character Misery dies in the end, Annie rages at Paul, revealing she is mentally unstable. She closes this conversation by saying that she never contacted the authorities about his disappearance and that nobody knows he is there. As the car wreck has left him bedridden, causing severe trauma to his legs, Paul is trapped and must learn to survive with a woman he believes is fully capable of killing him.
That's why you always leave a note.
Alright, this is a fascinating film because it's a very layered piece. While it's certainly a thriller, there are ever present the elements of horror, humor, even romance, albeit to a twisted extent. I mentioned before that Rob Reiner was the director and named a few of his earlier credits. When taking on this film, he said that he related to the character of Paul Sheldon and that he wanted to direct something new that would grow him as a director. For someone whose forte up to this point had been romantic comedy, he offers a very interesting perspective to this story. Rather than cap on the graphic violence from the book in efforts to shock us as we've grown accustomed to seeing done today, Reiner instead wisely chooses to focus on the relationship between the characters and the many facets of their personalities. And in that sense, this is very much in the vein of a Hitchcock kind of film. This is a very psychological movie. One of the strongest qualities that this film can boast, in my opinion, is that nobody feels like your standard cookie-cut trope. You know what I mean? It's like every character feels very multi-dimensional, in particular Annie Wilkes, which I think we can attribute to Kathy Bates' iconic performance, which I'll get to here in a bit. But it's fascinating to study the dynamic between her and Paul's relationship. I mean, on the one hand you have Paul, who obviously wants nothing more than to get out of this situation, but in the same sense, he needs Annie in order to survive. And then you have Annie, who is rehabilitating Paul and helping him get back to his health. But she's also becoming more and more obsessed with this idea of keeping him. And then our question is, to what end? Is it because she wants him to write more of these Misery novels? Is it because she's falling in love with him? These are all questions that this film weighs, answers, and they all add a lot to this film's storytelling. Again though, Reiner does such a good job at isolating what to include and what to hold back from the source material. And in abstaining from some of those more violent aspects of the book, what we see feels more real, and we feel more connected to this claustrophobic situation. And it's not too overwhelming either. He has this talent for lowering your defenses by showing you humor in areas where you typically wouldn't expect to see it. And this often comes in the form of Annie's homely isms and efforts to make Paul feel more at home. Hi, Pumpkin! And Paul's often sarcastic responses to her. Which leads me to the performances. Now, there were a lot of actors who were actually approached for the role of Paul Sheldon. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Michael Douglas, William Hurt a couple of times. Bruce Willis even landed the part in the Broadway production of Misery. But I'm really glad that they cast James Caan for this film because he's that slightly less prominent face, you know? I mean, it's like, yeah, we've seen him before in other movies, but he's not the first name that comes to mind. And I kind of feel like you need that quality in order to really sell the character. It's been said that the part of Paul Sheldon is a largely reactive role, and that rings very true, in that he will be accommodating and warm to Annie in one instance, and then cursing her existence in the next. James Caan is able to sell all of these, as well as the fact that he is severely injured through the vast majority of the movie. And then there's Kathy Bates. This film won her the Academy Award for Best Actress.
I would like to thank Jimmy Caan and apologize publicly for the ankles.
And yes, she is absolutely phenomenal and utterly convincing in every aspect of Annie's character. Annie Wilkes is all at once sweet, hilarious, disturbing, and threatening, and Kathy Bates nails all of it. Even as Annie's feelings for Paul evolve and shift on a dime, we never feel like it's outside of her character or her madness to be this way. It's simply who she is. Kathy Bates captures an authenticity that is rarely captured in such a way. At a certain point, it doesn't even feel like acting anymore. It feels more like Annie Wilkes has become so completely fleshed out that you feel like she's an actual person. You feel like you've met her somewhere before. I'm not kidding, this is honestly one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen given by an actress. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, rating this film has actually been a real struggle for me. So much so that I actually filmed this review twice because I wasn't fully sold on my initial conclusions. I mean, seriously, it's like I had a voice in my head saying,
I really value your criticism, but maybe we're being a little hasty here.
Now, I want to be very clear on something. I love this film. I think it's excellent. That being said, I don't think it's an absolute masterpiece. And your obvious and perfectly reasonable question is likely why, and well, that's kind of what's stumping me, because it's really hard for me to place what falls short about this film. There's really nothing inherently wrong about how this film is made. The story is really good. The performances are great. But I kind of think there's only so much you can get out of it. Roger Ebert said that it's almost like you can't mess up this film's premise, and I kind of see what he meant by that. Is it a well-made movie? Definitely. Am I going to recommend it? Yes. If you're looking for something that's engaging, something that will give you chills at points that you can really dig into on a cold winter's evening, that's a little much, then yeah, you should check out Misery. I just honestly can't say in good faith that I feel like this movie reaches those peak levels of inspiration that I feel warrant a perfect score. It's a great movie, but I feel like its reach only goes so far. Misery is rated R for language and intense violence. I am giving it 4.5 out of 5. Guys, in case you didn't know, my 2-part review of Stephen King's It is up, so if you have an interest in his adapted works, I've included the links in the description below. Guys, I appreciate you again so much for watching. I'll have another review up for you next week, and don't forget, you're on Real Time with Joe.